like to thank, we'll get into this, but Dale has been a huge part of my spiritual growth. David Buckley, guys like Gary Herbert, Chuck Morgan, just to name a few, but just the community that this church offers has been huge, and I just want to appreciate those guys. Speaking of those men and speaking of the community of this church, we moved down to Cincinnati in 1990. That was a really good year for sports around here. We had season tickets to the Reds there. My dad worked for MetLife that was in the building down the street, and I don't even think that building's there anymore. So congratulations, MetLife. It was a year that the Bengals did pretty well too, if I'm remembering. Super Bowl trip that year in 90, I believe. Lost to the 49ers. I want to say I'm getting some head nods, so I must be on the right track here. But I actually knew about Christ Church at the old building. Spent some time there, the Burgess family. I grew up with their youngest son at Mason, Adam. Knew him really well. And his older brother, Aaron, who still to this day likes WWF, used to beat the crap out of us, really, with some power bombs and things like that. It was a good time. But knew about Christ Church. Was a part of Mish, dead serious about life through high school. Was a pretty decent athlete. I'm not as good of a basketball player as I've seen Boyd pull off in this gym in here, but was a basketball player, soccer player, and ran track for Mason and Kings, and then just played soccer and volleyball at Moeller. But much like Chris, that was my identity. It's who I was. Took that trip to Germany, stayed over there for a few months and played for Kaiserslautern FC, which is right near Frankfurt, Frankenthal area. And again, even though over there I didn't know a lot of the language, soccer was who I was, so it didn't really matter. And I stood out on the field, was never much of a talker. I was just much of look at me and see what I can do type of person. Once I kind of lost my soccer career due to some knee and ankle injuries and not just really wanting to move on with it, I kind of lost my identity as well. We were just at the table here talking about church hurt and the generational curse that can cause. My dad was very involved near the Findlay, Ohio area where we grew up, the Lima-Findlay kind of triangle there. Did a lot of the accounting for the church and things like that, and even sometimes in a smaller church was paying bills out of his own pocket and then getting reimbursed by the church. There were some times where the reimbursement from the church didn't really happen all that well and the funds didn't come in time for some things, and my dad experienced some church hurt from that. So there were, much like at Chris's table in my family, there were two things that we didn't talk about. My parents are both 76, so if that gives you a timeline of who their parents were. World War II veteran, my grandfather. I grew up in a house where there was two things that you didn't talk about at the dinner table. Does anybody want to take a guess at what those were? Politics and religion. Exactly, 100%. So that's the house that I grew up in. But I had coaches, right, that at a crucial time in my life that were good men, but they weren't Christians. So they were preaching and pouring into me of who I was and what my identity was as an athlete, but they weren't ever filling me full of Jesus or the gospel. So when it came to where my idol, soccer, was taken away, I had no idea who I was. But I did know that I was smart, so I graduated from Xavier University, go Muskies, in 2004, and immediately started working at Avon Fields Golf Course my senior year. Got really good at golf, which I had kind of grown up in, and just literally worked my tail off all the way up to being the first assistant at Glenview for about 6 years. Went to Bellwood Country Club, Walden Ponds, and then my last year in the business was doing a little bit of teaching, and I was the third assistant at the Heritage Club back in its heyday when they had like 6 of us punks running around cleaning carts thinking that we could give lessons and make you guys really good. Didn't work out all that well, but during this whole entire time, I fell into a trap that a lot of guys in their 20s do without religion. So women, alcohol, having fun, doing whatever I wanted to, staying out till 2 or 3 a.m. and then going to work at 7 a.m. You don't leave a whole lot of room for Jesus in a lot of those moments. Kind of just living the high life, really doing whatever you wanted. Completely lost focus of the way that I had grown up, the fact that I was confirmed in the Methodist Church, the fact that I was part of Mission, helping other high school students at altar calls, praying over them. Completely lost touch. And there were moments where I was trying to go back to God. And this will kind of lead into everything else. But it was like every single time I tried to go back to God, started trying to do better, put on a different hat. Like I grew up in a house where they said, you gotta know how to wear many hats, right? The professional hat, the athlete hat, this hat, that hat, answer the phone hat for your dad who works at MetLife and your mom who works for Community Mutual, Blue Cross Blue Shield, a professional phone answerer by the time I was 12 when there wasn't cell phones. And after work, they called the house, right? So I knew how to put on multiple hats. But every time I went back to God, I always just felt like there was these big tests. I'd start praying again, lose a job, get a better job, buy a nice car, kind of financially strapped. Probably not the best decision to buy that two-door Mustang convertible GT on a golf professional's salary. Wasn't a great idea. Get in a car wreck, right? Experienced some back pain for a couple of years after that. And I blamed it all on God. It was like every single time I try to come back to you, every single time I try to put on that faith hat, you just test me and you test me and you test me. So I left it alone for a long time. My wife Jill and I, when we had JC, so it was 2020. Spring of 2020, we sold our house in Fairfield Township and moved over to Kings. We wanted to be in the Kings community, Kings schools. And I had always played golf at Bellwood Country Club. My dad had been a member there for about 19, 20 years, maybe 21 years at that time. And I was a pretty good golfer still. Got back down to about a 2 to 3 handicap. No joke. The fish is not that big. It's actually, I was a 2 handicap, trust me. I was shooting close to even par most rounds. And my dad, who experienced that church hurt and everything, said, hey, there's a guy here that pretty good golfer as well, scratch golfer. He's tatted up like you. You might want to meet him. And I said, well, man, I don't know. Like, I enjoy playing with some of the older guys and taking all your money on the skins game. I said, but if he's another good golfer, young guy, that's pretty cool. Like, we might have something in common. Thanks for prejudging me, Dad, and just thinking that this other tattooed individual is up my alley because I have tattoos as well. But so he introduced me to a guy named Trevor DeVage. I talked to Trevor, knew that he was the pastor here at Christ Church, and he knew that I wasn't in a good place with God for quite a while. So we did what we called our walk and talks. We would just talk about anything. We didn't really cover faith or what I used to call organized religion for quite a while. And about 5 months in, after I had been taking some butt whoopings from Trevor quite a bit and was getting kind of mad about that. If anybody knows Bellwood, you start out, I think they switched the 9s back again though, and they keep doing that, but little tough par 4, short par 3, tough par 4, and then there's a long par 5 that goes up this hill. And through the first 3 holes as a scratch golfer, I was about 5 over. Not good, right? Not having a great day. And walking up this long hill after a bad drive, I just looked at Trevor and I said, you know what my problem with God is? There was no other conversation before that. He was leaving me alone because he knew how bad I was playing and how mad I was at myself. And I literally look at a pastor and say, you know what my problem with God is? His eyes got about that big. Eyebrows all the way up. What? And that's Trevor being quiet, for those of you that know Trevor. Oh, what? I said, my problem with God is that every single time I try to go back to him, he just tests me and tests me and tests me. And it's like, you know how weak I am? Why are you going to come at me like that? Why aren't you just going to take me back in, love on me a little bit, show me some of that mercy and grace I hear everybody talking about and that I grew up with, instead of just testing me. And Trevor, and if you ask him to this day, he doesn't remember saying it, but I do. He looked right at me and he said, What if that's not God? Now, some of you are nodding your head. I didn't nod my head, because for the next 4 holes, all that was in my head was, who is this guy? Pastor man telling me, what if it's not God? All I ever grew up with is everything is God, right? Everything's God. So we get all the way around to number 9. So I'm walking for 45 minutes with this guy, and if you ever play golf with Trevor, he walks 150 yards in front of you. It's no wonder he has been hit by a golf ball as many times as I've seen him get hit by a golf ball. But in my back of my head, I'm looking up at him, and I'm like, Pastor man, what if it's not God? And who does this guy think he is? What if it's not God? But it's the best thing that was ever said to me. Because on hole number 9, it's a longer par 3 right next to the parking lot there. I almost aced it. Literally ripped the cup out, broke part of the cup, bounced out. It doesn't count. It wasn't in. Part of the cup was shattered all over the green. Hey, he looks at me and he goes, hey, man, nice shot, bub. My thought, was, Pastor, man, not God. Okay, what if it's not God? But by the time we got up to that 180-yard green away, I realized something clicked. I was like, Brian, you're an idiot. You grew up in this. You walked away from it. You know it's not God. You know about the authority given. You know that the enemy can test you. You know that he's going to distract you. What are you thinking? You know that all this time it wasn't God testing you and poking at you. It's the enemy trying to distract you and keep you away from what his plan is for you to do. I will tell you, I shot 2 under on the back 9. I did, because there was just a peace in that moment, a piece of quietness. So we get back to the parking lot that day, and Trevor comes over to me and he goes, hey man, nice back 9. I was like, thanks, bro. Appreciate that. I'm all chipper now after, recovering, hit that last shot on 18 that brings you back, right? I guess I'll play golf again. And we're in the parking lot kind of messing around, just talking. And he's like, hey man, I know I've never really asked you before, but we're starting a new series this week called Dangerous Prayers. We're back in the building and everything. Why don't you and Jill and JC Jean come check it out? I said, man, I don't know. I've been at Christ Church before. Don't know if it's really my vibe. Still don't know about this whole organized religion thing, but I know I'm pretty good at failing miserably doing it on my own. He's like, yeah, just come check it out. I think you'll really like the series. I'm like, cool. So it's about a 10-minute drive to our house. We live up of 48 across the street there from TPC, not in TPC, across from TPC, trust me. And I got home and my wife is staring out our back window. I walk in, I was like, hey, hon. Hey. I'm like, oh, great, what did I do? Was that a 6-hour round? Like, was that too long of a round? She's just looking out the back window. I'm like, where's JC? She goes, oh, she's up taking a nap. She was about 2.5 at the time. I said, well, what's going on? She goes, I'm just thinking. I really think that we should find a church to go to so that JC could at least grow up with a little bit of church basis and morality and things like that like we grew up with. And that's when I was kind of like, I got you. 15 minutes in between. I got my best friend telling me for the first time he's going to have that. We've had a bunch of good conversations. Opened it up to a God conversation, right? And then he's inviting me to have a gospel conversation. And then I have my wife, the standard, right? You walk in, the standard of our household is her kindness, her love, saying, hey, we got to go to church. I said, you know what? Let's go ahead and go. So that was about 5 years ago now, if anybody wants to look it up on the YouTube channel when we did Dangerous Prayers. But we came to Christ Church that Sunday, and we haven't missed since. So there was a break in that time. Obviously, we know Trevor's out at Tucson now at Pantano, but there was a lot of transition after that, coming into church, diving into faith, diving into whose I am instead of who I was, right? And at the time, I was vice president of national business development for a commercial facility company. We couldn't have asked for much more as far as money-wise and taking care of those things, but instead of soccer being my idol, work was, money was. notoriety in the industry was as a young and upcoming professional. But there were just things in that industry that was shady. I mean, shady. Just didn't enjoy it. And literally one weekend I broke down. We took JC over to the children's area, and Jill made it into that service that day, but I did not. I ended up in the guest gathering room with Dale. I think we went well past service that day as well, literally just in tears of this isn't me. Maybe I've done it again, but I feel like I'm being called to do something more. So that took a lot of transition, a lot of talks, a lot of good counsel with guys like Dale, lunches with Dave. If you cough into your elbow, you don't tear up. Did you guys know that? But conversations with Dale and Dave and some other really just great guys around here and good counsel with Alan and Brad as well. And just kind of navigated through some different things. On August 29th last year, after being dedicated as a baby, poured on at 6 years old, I decided to go ahead and get baptized. My parents told me, yeah, you don't need it. You're already covered. You had the Holy Spirit poured out on you at that church. But I did it for a different reason this time. I did it as my dedication. To make my faith my own. But it doesn't stop there. It really doesn't stop there. I had a chance to go back into business development at a pretty large level. I had multiple talks with Alan about it, of just, hey, how do I do this? How do I move forward? I know what the industry's like. I had about 2 or 3 different offers on the table, and Alan told me one day, and Alan's a big part of this, because one day I was just sitting there at home and I said, hey man, do you have some time today? And he sent me a text message. He goes, for a baptism? I was like, no man, I got a few offers. I just want to go to lunch with you and get your expertise and talk about this a little bit. And he goes, well, come. All he wrote back was, the water's warm. It's like, dude, are you deaf-earing me? Like, what's going on? You're like, okay, well, I didn't hesitate that day, and I just drove up here and ended up getting baptized. So that was pretty cool. But about a week or two later, we all sat down, and I was just reviewing some offers with him that would have been great for the family this way, great for the family this way. But that was the day that he actually slid an offer across the table to bring me in here. And that role was accepted last year, and December 1st was my first day. So as a resident here at Christ Church, which if all of you want to talk individually, we can do that, because that role is just way too hard to explain. But at 44 years old, I went from being this national VP with quite a few different sales people underneath me into taking a residency role at a church that's mainly meant for maybe that age group over there, fresh out of college, with a theology degree or pastoral care degree and things like that. But they believed in me. They brought me in here to do those things. I couldn't be more blessed to where God took me and slowed me down over the past year, from the hustle and bustle and everything that I was doing, to really pour into me so I can turn around and pour into others. This church has just been a huge part of that. But I can tell you, in that transition, after I dedicated my life to Christ, dedicated my life to pastoral care and ministry, and coming in here and checking that out and seeing what that's like. Ironically enough, December 13th last year, about 2 weeks into my residency here, it's Friday the 13th too. I don't really find that too odd. There was a lot of things that changed for our family even in that. My wife, I don't know if all of you saw my wife last year with her leg up, rolling around on a scooter. She tripped and fell at Chick-fil-A in Westchester. Now, if you know Jill, go ahead and joke around with her about that. It's about chewing gum and walking at the same time. But now has a titanium rod in her leg. That same morning, my father and I, who owned a horse business together, the star of our barn, Aquaholic, who was about a $60,000 to $65,000 a year winner in harness racing that kept our whole business afloat, just tripped on the track that morning as well, at about the same time. And 2 weeks later, she had to be retired. And she was 4 years old. So plenty of racing life left for her. And then 2 weeks after that, a little filly named Thicker Than a Snicker. That's funny, guys. You're allowed to laugh at that. Thicker Than a Snicker. She actually got loose out of our barn, and when she was running back home, slipped and fell on the concrete, ripped her leg open so bad that it started a pretty big infection almost immediately, and we had to put her down. So here was the enemy again. All right, dude, you got baptized. Cool. We've been here before. You're going to go ahead and do this thing for Christ, huh? That's cool, dude. We've been there before. How can I distract you now? I'm going to take everything away from you. Go ahead and put you in a financial crisis with your barn. $15,000 worth of vet bills. It's very expensive to have to put a $900 or 900-pound horse down. Dad no longer has a retirement little career that he has fun with. You're to blame for that because you don't have the money to pull you guys through in this business, right? These were all the thoughts that I had. The enemy's just whispering. Your wife's hurt. You need to stay at home with her and take care of her and the girls. What are you going to do? And the only peace that I found at that time was to just dive in even deeper. Because the enemy wasn't going to get me again. He wasn't going to continue to distract me. He wasn't going to win this time. And I knew it wasn't God throwing the test out there. It was him to pull me away, to stop me from what I might be able to do at a minimum for my family, and maybe at a maximum somewhere in between there for his kingdom. To break a generational curse of church hurt, to try and get my mom and dad back into the church, and what I might do for any of you guys, because Todd and I have known each other for a while. And I believe in Todd when he says, men, you have to be ready. You have to be ready for a 5-minute testimony. You have to be ready with a 10-minute testimony. You have to be ready with a 15 to 16-minute testimony, if not 20. You have to be ready because you might be the only Bible, you might be the only vision of Jesus that somebody sees. Would you rather be that, or would you rather be the vision of the enemy that somebody sees? I have faith in everybody in this room that I know that you want to be the version of the Bible, of Jesus, of the gospel that somebody else sees. And you have to be ready to explain that, no matter how bad it hurts, no matter if you're going to cry in front of a bunch of men. Just cough into your elbow. It works, see? There's not even any stains. But I want to thank all of you. Thank you for letting me stand up here to talk about myself. It's not easy to do in a room full of men that you admire. So thank you guys for that.